So my name is Thomas Guest. I'll introduce myself a little bit more in a bit, but the way we're going to structure the next 30 minutes or so is that we're going to have some lightning pitches from these two amazing people next to me, 5 minutes or so each on the work that they're both doing, and then we'll have about 20 minutes to be in dialogue together around the topic of thermal energy networks, or TENS, as we're calling them. So, Greg, you want to get us rolling?
Sure, happy to. Let me see. Oh, let me go back. I'll do a quick introduction. My name is Greg Koumoullos. I do work at Edison, conveniently located. Our headquarters is right across the street, so thank you for the location. I've been at Ed for 20 years next week, and the last 3 years really focused on this topic of district energy, what we call thermal energy networks. And I'm going to talk about today about what these are and how they came about, and really the excitement about where we are today and what the future could look like in this kind of community energy space. So to start off with, really, this all kind of came to be from a law that was passed back in July of 2022. And what that law passed, the New York State law, pretty much it mandated and required that the biggest utilities of the state, like Con Edison and National Grid, that we propose anywhere between 1 and 5 pilot projects of what was called the thermal energy network. And we weren't really sure what that even was at first, and I'm going to explain what that is if you're not sure what it is either. And really the idea behind it, and really the driver of these thermal networks, is exactly what was just spoken about putting together the need for clean energy solutions, as well as also the job creation workforce, or who's going to build these systems and the impact to there. So, I mean, there was a lot of objectives for the state. Obviously, they wanted to reduce emissions, wanted to make sure that it makes sense from a cost basis, and and there's equity of where they come. So there's a big, strong focus of building these in disadvantaged communities, as well as that just transition. That in the world where we talk about decarbonizing and maybe downsizing gas systems, there is a workforce that works on these gas systems, and to have an alternative where they can kind of work with is really important to them and to really the economy as a whole. So I just want to see what this looks like so big. Wow. That's the biggest and widest I've seen that. So what is it? Really, think of a thermal network at a utility scale or even at any 10. For us, we see it as a fourth commodity. So you're probably familiar with our electric system, our gas system, and our steam system. And those are piping systems that we own as a company. This would be the same. So the pipes that you see going around there from left to right, those will be our distribution mains. They'd be water-filled pipes. And the purpose of those pipes is really to transfer heat energy. So we're going to be transferring heat energy from a thermal resource. Could be bore fields in the ground. It could be a commercial office building's waste heat. Could be sewer waste heat. And then we're going to transport that via our piping system over to customers. And those customers, they're going to use heat pumps, just like they would for a geothermal, water source heat pumps, to step up that, either step it up in the winter for heating or step it to cool it for cooling. And it kind of all gets cycled around. And because it's a Con Ed system, it's a closed loop system for us. We need an energy center building, which basically is the pumps that pumps the water all around. So we're not delivering water. We're using the water the same way we use copper in our electric system. It's just used to transfer energy. So where we are, I'll talk about 3 projects in 2 minutes. So we have 3 pilots that we designed, and really what we wanted to do in these pilots was to really get the opportunity to test out our whole service territory. So if you're not familiar with Con Edison, which hopefully is a local event, most are, we're the electric distribution system for New York City, the 5 boroughs of Westchester County. We cover a spectrum of types of buildings, and this is what you see here. So the first project I'll talk about is the Mount Vernon project. It's on that side. That's a district geothermal project. We're looking to interconnect 42 different buildings, anything from 1 to 3 family homes through commercial and multifamily buildings. And it's a district geothermal project. We're going to be installing 200 boreholes spread across 4 different bore fields. And really, customers will be connecting to our system, again, using those heat pumps for heating and cooling and domestic hot water needs. The other projects that we have here are Rockefeller Center, which is exactly what you're thinking of, 30 Rock, and those buildings there. Those buildings are constantly cooling all year long. Could be 20 degrees outside. They're running their cooling inside their building for things like NBC Studios and their interiors of the buildings. We're going to take that waste heat out of the building during heating season. We're going to put it into our pipes, and we're going to transport it to the 3 buildings you see there for heating. And the final project is down by Chelsea, where we have a data center and a commercial office building that we're going to take advantage of the waste heat there, similar concept in the winter, and then we're going to transfer that heat to 3 New York City Housing Authority buildings for domestic hot water, and one of those buildings for heating and cooling. And we'll take advantage of those cooling towers that you see on top of that building to help with the cooling. So it really is a great way to kind of decarbonize those in all different areas. That goes from large residential that we have in New York to large commercial to some of the more suburban areas of our service territory. And finally, that link there, if there's questions, I'll get into it later. I may pop it up again later if they let me, because you can get in contact with us there and help kind of support the efforts. I'll turn it over.
Thanks, Greg.
Can you hear me? Yes. Hi, I'm Jeanne Bergman. I work with SANE Energy Project, which is a small nonprofit activist organization here in New York City, but we work statewide to try to eliminate the fracked gas infrastructure in our state and to replace it with democratically controlled, renewable, safe, clean, sustainable systems. And in order to get rid of gas, what we need to do is we need to have something that is an affordable and renewable replacement. And thermal energy is, to us, that system, that technology. And what's so great about it is that we're surrounded by heat. I mean, actually, the example of Rock Center is perfect because it's not like they have to generate a ton of extra heat. They're producing it through their computers and their electronics and the people who are sweating. And it's, we're surrounded by heat. We live in a world of heat. Actually, the dean earlier said that the engineering school has been around since 1854. That is the same year that Lord Kelvin coined the term thermal energy. And so these things come together at a time. I mean, thermal energy is the energy that fuels our experience. And it makes it very compatible with community energy systems, because what these systems do, Greg mentioned thermal energy or heat as a commodity, but actually, unlike other commodities, it isn't just spent. It isn't used and therefore destroyed, but rather it continues to be circulated through the whole system. So it's ideal for community systems because it really exemplifies the connections that we have between us. It is a local resource that can be locally managed. I can't actually read that down there. They should only hire young people for these gigs. And it's affordable. It's rapidly scaled. It improves health. You're not burning fossil fuels in your home, and it's much safer because gas systems periodically explode. Here in the Lower East Side, there was a terrible explosion 5 or 6 years ago that took down a house and killed a couple of people. It decreases the electricity demand, and it smooths the peaks in electricity demand. We have to produce enough electricity or gas for the coldest and hottest days of the year. But if you're putting water that is at the same consistent temperature into those systems day round, because it's coming from underground, then you don't have those peaks. As I said, it literally connects all of the people and buildings in a system, and that is very exciting. We at SANE Energy are interested in collaborating with the work that the utilities are doing, but to develop non-utility thermal energy systems through municipal ownership, through co-op ownership, like through large affordable housing, multifamily buildings, where my friend JK here is leading the charge on one of them, and community nonprofit ownership. The success of any system, including those run by the utilities, is the willingness of the residents to participate, because under New York state regulatory law, if one household says, no, I want to keep my gas, under the obligation to serve, everybody has to keep their gas. And so that is something that we need to change. But the way to change it is to educate and make everybody aware of the systems, what they could get out of it, what the benefits are for them, what the challenges are. And through that, we're thinking about participatory planning. So I also work with the city of Kingston through Mid-Hudson Energy Transition, another nonprofit, to help develop a thermal energy network there and to really have the community lead on the development of that system. So our goal is to find different ways to learn from what the utilities are doing, because they are really taking the lead on this and they're taking the risk. And then one last thing that is a complicated question, and that is, I came to the climate field from HIV/AIDS work, and the utilities are required to build these systems in disadvantaged communities, and that's good. But disadvantaged communities in many domains, including medicine, are often the subjects of experiments. And so it is crucial, it is absolutely crucial that these systems are built beautifully, that they work, that people aren't exploited, that they don't find that it's not working in the winter or in the summer, and that they're either too hot or too cold. So we are really counting on the expertise of Con Edison in particular, which I think is among the utilities really the star, to develop these systems and make them work. Thanks.
Yeah, let's also just appreciate that we have an investor-owned utility on the same stage as an activist organization fighting for environmental justice. You know, this is a big deal, folks. So these are the types of partnerships that are really important for us to build together in New York. So yeah, quickly, my name is Thomas Guest. I'm the founder of a youth-led global coalition called BRYM. We have a leadership team of people under 35 years old across 15 different countries, and we build, develop, and fund locally led projects focused on clean energy, food, and water security. So as we think about our work today, I'm also a born and raised New Yorker. So I'm very, while we're thinking about this federal landscape and the uncertainty that's coming from it, I'm also very excited and proud to be a part of this city's push and movement to make the change we can. And one of those ways in which we're thinking about change is thermal energy networks. So I want to get right into some tangible specifics around the three projects you mentioned, Greg, and maybe we can use that as a jumping off point. So we have these three thermal energy networks that you're building, one upstate, or I guess Westchester-ish, however you want to qualify that, two in the city. Can you give us a sense of where we're at in the process of developing those projects, where you've been, where we are today, and what's coming next?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing to keep in mind with these type of projects, even at the smallest scale, and maybe those projects look potentially big, but really, the biggest one has 42 smaller buildings, and then the other ones would probably have the most load. We're talking about 4 or 5 different buildings connecting. So they're very expensive, and that's important. And who's paying for these projects is we are, not we, Con Ed, the company, we, the people that pay Con Ed bills, right? And myself as a Con Ed customer. So that's where it's important to balance affordability as well as it is getting the learnings from these projects. And it is an investment. So what we're trying to do, the way that the Public Service Commission has kind of structured it for us, is that they built stage gates. So before they approve a project for full construction, they wanted us to design those projects first and make sure we go through that process of approval. So right now, we're in that stage 2, which is full design of the projects and the creation of all the agreements and the rates and all that goes into that, the customer protections. So we'll be filing that to the state this July 9th. And then the state will then go to the Public Service Commission. They'll go out for public comment period. They'll review it, and the PSC will make a determination which of these 3 projects, 1, 2, or 3 of them, as long as the other projects in the state will get approved for construction. So we are an exciting spot because we're just finishing up in the next couple of weeks full design, construction-ready drawings for all of these projects.
Great. Quick follow-up. So after July 9th, you're putting in for what's the approval you're looking for? What happens after that?
Yep. So the next step would then be for them to approve the projects of full construction and operation. These pilot projects are looking to operate for a minimum of 5 years, but the reality is that once we even build them and install them, we want them to run indefinitely. But we have to have some protection for our customers and ourselves if we had to unwind them, to be able to unwind those projects.
Awesome. Yeah, and Jeanne, I think when we were preparing for this conversation, there's an informational gap about thermal energy networks, myself included. I think rewind 6 months ago, before I met Greg, I really did not know that this was going on, right? But there's also an informational gap, as we've talked a lot about today, around the concept of community energy, like this amorphous term. You spoke a little bit about it in your intro, but I'm hoping we can get the next layer down here. What variables are you thinking about, frameworks that you're implementing? What does community energy mean to you, and within the specific context of these thermal energy networks?
It is an amorphous concept because, as it is, most of us experience energy from the perspective of being a customer of a large company which is delivering a product to us. And it's a product that warms our homes or allows us to turn our lights on or to cook dinner. And there are different ways of thinking about community energy, but they generally all involve local control over those resources, and often something that is sometimes called like a digital system, a system where a virtual power plant, it's sometimes called, where different buildings owned by different people are producing and using energy through solar or through geothermal and sharing that energy with their neighbors. And one kind of vision is that you can have whole neighborhoods really sort of stand alone in those systems. There aren't very many examples of that are not campus-based systems, but NYU has an amazing under the gym over there on 8th Street, or 4th or whatever it is. Anyway, Washington Square South, where they produce electricity and they produce heat, and it does burn fossil fuels, but it is as amazingly sustainable as a system can be. And so during Sandy, what is it now, 12 years ago, if you looked at a photograph of New York City, it was mostly dark, except where NYU was, where their cogen system was continuing to produce electricity and heat. And those of us who live in the neighborhood were able to go and load our phone batteries at NYU. So we don't usually think of them as a great neighbor, but that week they were. And that kind of islanding, where you can produce and sustain the energy of a community, is very, very inspiring. The only difference that I would like to see is doing that without burning gas or oil.
Awesome. And of course, when we think about community energy within this event series, Climate is the New Economy, one of the big things we think about is who owns what, right? So investor-owned utilities are one piece of the puzzle. You have also these sort of microgrid island concepts that can be independent or connected in, but locally owned by people around where it's being produced. But then there's community energy. Another piece of this is also, I've learned from you, is about the design and how these systems are developed. So I guess, Greg, a question for you from the Con Ed perspective is, how do you see a utility's role in, as we build out thermal energy networks or community energy networks? You have activist organizations, you have EPCs, you have builders, you have startups. Where does Con Ed fit into this, and what do you see your role as in the larger scope here?
Yep, no, it's a great question, and I think I'll do a quick regulated utility 101 in about 20 seconds. When we design our electric system, and we were very proud and the most reliable utility in the country by far, we do it because we design it off the peaks. And typically in this city, we peak during the summer. That's when the most people use electricity, the most electricity is used, or for air conditioning. Now, when we drive towards decarbonizing our buildings, suddenly that peak now moves to the winter, right? So it takes more electricity in the winter to do heating than it does electricity in the summer to do cooling. What that means is that now we have to do major investments into our system to upgrade them, more cables, more wires, more substations, larger substations to make up for that. That cost eventually then gets bared down to us, the customers now, the customer hat on, right? to be able to have our system. Anything that brings that down, anything, whether it's a utility-owned thermal energy network or a community third-party owned thermal energy network, or just building energy efficiency measures. There's reasons why Con Ed gives such amazing incentives for energy efficiency work. It's because we absolutely want everyone to do this. It's great when you have a building down by Brooklyn that goes up and puts geothermal in their foundation down in 1 Java Street before they build a building. That is absolutely a win-win for the utilities and win-win for the customers and the community as a whole. So we are totally for community-based ones like SANE is doing. The more the better. The more we build, the more common they'll be, the better they're going to be, and then we can expand on them more.
And we, in turn, are really grateful for and reliant on the pilot projects that the utilities are doing, because the utilities, and here again, Con Ed stands out. I'm sorry to be so, friendly to Con Ed, but really, they're doing this right because they developed 3 different models for these pilots so that they can test and learn about different strategies for building thermal energy units, for capturing the heat, for getting rid of the heat. It's really important. And those lessons are things that we, all of us, can really learn from. And I also it just occurred to me, I wanted to bring in one little detail that you may not know. When you think about geothermal, you are probably thinking about the very, very hot water and stone that is deep under the earth, and that in some places, especially along the Pacific Rim of Fire, is close to the surface and can be drawn directly to, you bring it up, it produces steam, it powers rotors, and it generates electricity. That is not what we're talking about. We are talking about capturing the heat that is just below the surface, 400, 1,000 feet. It is consistently in New York about 55 to 57 degrees. And that's why the heat pumps that are drawing from that are able to work at a constant level. It's not very cold. So when people say, oh, you can't use heat pumps in a cold climate, well, it might be true that air source heat pumps in your window or outside your window on the ground are not very effective in very cold climates because it takes a ton of electricity to warm the air in your house. But geothermal systems, whether it's a standalone on a residence or a thermal energy network, are incredibly efficient.
Yeah, for a crash course in thermal energy networks, you guys have a video online, right? There's a 2-minute video, 3-minute video. We can send that around afterwards because I still need to do some learning about this as well. But I think, this is a good segue into maybe a little bit about the Lower East Side project as well, because one of the things that Greg said to us in our preparatory call was that, Con Ed doesn't need to be the only one generating these projects. It's like, okay, that's really good to hear. So there are smaller scale independent programs that are starting new initiatives to get these thermal energy networks up and running. And Jeanne and her team are working on one of those. Do you mind sharing a little bit?
Yes. But I have to say, it is in the very early stages and is by no means a sure thing yet. So we're working with a Mitchell-Lama affordable multifamily housing facility. We have a board member here videoing. And they are doing a massive energy efficiency retrofit. They planned that retrofit before they knew about geothermal systems. So now we're trying to kind of backfill and see if we can get a geothermal system and also wastewater heat recovery system built into that design. So that would radically cut their costs over the next 50 years. It would probably pay itself back in 20, and then they would be basically be riding free for heating, cooling, and hot water. And cooling is increasingly, as you know, important as the climate worsens, and we have days like this following freezing weeks like last week. So we need heating, cooling, and we need hot water. Hot water often takes 40% of the cost and of the climate-changing gas emissions of a large residential building. So our goal first is to convert that building to geothermal energy plus wastewater heat recovery, and we've gotten pretty far with NYSERDA in the planning for that. And then ideally to use that as an anchor for a larger thermal energy network in the Lower East Side. And one of the things that's great about these systems is that they're essentially potentially modular. You can keep adding on block after block, neighborhood after neighborhood. So that would be our goal. And then we're also, my board colleague from Mid-Hudson Energy Transition is here, Simon Strauss. There we're working on a municipal thermal energy system which would provide heating, cooling, and hot water to both city buildings, including rec centers, the city hall, police departments, fire departments, and then also grow to include neighbors in residential houses. And there, what's really important is MHET has a lot of trust in the city of Kingston among low-income residents. And that trust is really crucial. If you're going to go to somebody and say, we want to convert not only your heating and cooling, but also your appliances from gas to this thing you've never heard of, you need to have a track record. And that's something that we also want to share with the utility projects, because that is the thing that can hang them up. They have to get neighborhood agreement. Surprisingly, utilities actually have a lot of community appreciation and support. Like, people often like their utility. Not so much Central Hudson, but not so much National Grid, but these guys, they're okay. So
write these down.
Yeah, don't quote me. I'll lose my job. So we really want to see these projects move forward in all of these different configurations.
Yeah, once again, reiterating the fact that these two organizations are on stage together. This is really important. Greg, so you have these 3 projects that are in development. They are going in for approval July 9th. Talk a little bit about the process engaging a group like SANE Energy, right? And just some of the processes that you have in place. And then, Jeanne, if you want to, build off of that with what that looks like for you guys, how it feels for you guys. I think that's the right next step here.
Yeah, I think this is one of those times that when you have different organizations and you kind of peel back all the layers in history and say, what are the goals? And a lot of times organizations or different stakeholders that may have had opposing thoughts over the years sometimes have common goals. And I think this is a perfect example where all parties really have common goals, from organizations that help create this law getting passed, like the Building Decarbonization Coalition and Upgrade New York and SANE Energy and a bunch of other organizations. We realize that it's common. And for Con Edison, it's very important to us. And it's important to us. And one thing that we try to always press forward is, on top of the reliability and the resiliency and the safety of our systems, is really that customer experience. And these organizations, they are our customers. Like, we're the customers, right? We're a New York City-based company with employees that live and work here, and we understand that it's important to make those goals and let's meet together and then come up with solutions. And the momentum we're building has been great. It's really incredible to see that we can get there, and that's how we can kind of show and spread the message that these type of solutions only get done if we're willing to try them together and learn from each other and share information with each other and have different solutions come out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it is worth noting that SANE Energy is an activist and policy group focused in particular on things like the Public Service Commission and the New York heat law, which would get rid of the obligation to serve and put a cap on energy costs for people. We are not, and we have a very strong member volunteer activist base, but we are not an environmental justice organization embedded in a particular community. But Village East Towers, the housing facility that we're working with, is, and Goals, good old Lower East Side, who I think I saw listed on the IN2 list. Those are organizations that are. And so we provide as much help as we can, technical help, guidance, information, connections, but we are not the people who go door to door. What has to happen is that folks who have the support and love and trust of the community are the groups that need to do that work.
Great. And in our last few minutes here, I think framing a question about the future, it's important to understand or at least acknowledge the past as well. So we're at this sort of pilot phase of the first dozen or so thermal energy network projects or pilots that are making their way out into the world. And the intention, hopefully, is to evolve that into a citywide movement, hopefully something that expands beyond New York. But how do you guys think about getting these projects out into the real world in a way that doesn't push forward a lot of the systems and structures that have gotten us into this environmental crisis in the first place, right? It's not just enough to have technology, but it's the how questions. How do you guys think about the jump from here to there with that in mind?
First, I mean, I think a lot of it is going to be this momentum that we have going, and to continue that momentum. There's opportunities that our regulators have to structure abilities to get letters in and comments in, everything that we do in our projects. There's a website up there that'll flash up again. There's a QR code. It links everything we file for our regulators, all publicly available. Either in the website form that looks nice, or you can get into the details. But it's having the ability to send those comments and those letters in, to organize and tell the regulators who really control it in New York State, is New York State Public Service Commission, that we want more of these, and it's worth the time and investment, because we're going to get the learnings that we're going to share across. I think that's the key, because there is a balance between affordability and learnings. And we see these networks as a tool in the toolbox that we could deploy in the future to the perfect areas to find the right solutions. Maybe it's not everywhere, but there's a lot of places where these make a lot of sense. And we want to have the ability to have this tool to go and implement them wherever they are.
And my only last comment on this would be that first I want to endorse the call to send comments to the Public Service Commission to have all 3 of those projects approved and not to delay. But secondly, this is not new technology. It is widespread in Europe, in Canada, and Scandinavia. All of the components are well known. There is expertise in drilling. And if you are a small business and looking to get into something, if I had $1 million, I would get into geothermal drilling. Not new, but great for labor, great for thermal energy networks.
Awesome. Well, that's our time. Thank you for listening in. And a big part of our goal set for this event series this year is to create 6 partnerships over the course of the annual calendar year. So if you want to get involved, if you have a sense of how your organization might plug in, chase these guys down afterwards and make that happen. But thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.